actually, sorry, before I just start reading the intro, Ryder is 2 years old, right?
No, he's 13 months.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. So I'm just going to say 1.5 because this is going to air in about a month or so. So yeah.
Yeah, that's probably accurate anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, great. So, all right. Let me get my mic set up. Imagine if you could be the best CEO of you and approach parenting the same way you approach leadership. This is a philosophy that Robyn Ward has come up with, and we're going to get into in our conversation today. Robyn Ward is a 20-year veteran of the technology startup space. She started Founder Forward, a boutique leadership development firm to help founders and executives up-level themselves and build high-performing teams, cultures, and companies. Current and past clients include Ritual, Ordermark, Tala, STEM, and Toucan, among others. A sought-after keynote and panelist, Robyn speaks at conferences, companies, and venture firms on topics relating to entrepreneurial mindset, peak performance, and best self-leadership. She also co-teaches performance mindset for business at her alma mater, USC. Prior to Founder Forward, Robyn launched and ran the strategic investment arm of United Talent Agency, where she drove investments in Patreon, Micmac, House Party, and Thrive Market, among others. Before UTA, Robyn was a business development and operations executive who served on the founding leadership teams of several venture-backed, sorry about that. Okay. Before UTA, Robyn was a business development and operations executive who served on the founding leadership teams of several venture-backed startups, including Duckstock, acquired by Intuit, and Verified Person, acquired by Sterling Talent Solutions. Robyn is a passionate community builder and connector, as well as a longtime champion of DEI in the tech ecosystem and beyond. She has been named a top woman in LA Tech by Digital LA and a top LA Tech ambassador by Tech Week. Robyn is a Techstars All-Star mentor, hashtag give first, and expert sorry, just a few more lines. Robyn is a Techstars All-Star mentor and expert network advisor to Steve Case's Rise of the Rest Fund, a board member of the Women Founders Network, an LP in the fund, and a proud part owner in Angel City Football Club. She adopted her son Ryder, who is now about 1.5 years old, and is a beacon for women and men who know they want to have children, but are not so aware of the adoption process. We are going to talk about all these things today. Robyn, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to speak about all these things.
Yes, me too. And I'm so glad that Sarah Harden had connected us. I'm just so thankful. And I feel like your story is incredible, and I can't wait for the audience to hear it.
All right, let's dig in.
All right. So I love to start from the beginning. Let's hear about your childhood. As a kid, when someone asked you, what do you want to be when you grow up? What would you respond?
I want to run companies.
Ah!
I did. I'm not one of those people that has some really interesting story with a bunch of career shifts. My grandfather, who's my namesake, Robert, was an entrepreneur. And I was obsessed with reading his magazines back when they were print magazines, and his Wall Street Journal. And I would go over there and he would teach me how to trade stocks. And I was going to be a woman running businesses.
Wow. And what about your siblings?
I have two siblings, two sisters. One lives in Chicago, one lives in Indiana, one's in real estate, and one is a success coach.
Oh, nice. Okay. And so tell us about how your parents raised the three of you and how that's kind of shaped who you are today.
Well, my mother raised by example. She is a very successful businesswoman. So in the 80s, it was rare to have a mom that worked, that was, busy sort of running our carpools, but also then running back to work. And so that was more lead by example. My dad was the one where he was my coach and I was a sports lover. It's my excitement around this new investment of mine in Angel City Football Club, run by some friends of mine. But he was coach. So most of the takeaways there are some sort of sports quote, whether it's swing for the fences, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. There is no I in team, all of them, and whatever John Ward would say. Right. But, it really impacted me. I've always been a risk taker. I've always put in the practice hours. I've always strongly believed that if I set my mind to it, and then of course worked really hard, that I could do it. And that's sort of driven me. I mean, I was raised, which I didn't say, in Indiana, right. And chose to go to college in Los Angeles when most of the folks I know go to Indiana University, which is a great university. Yes. So I really always have swung for the fences, taking risks.
Amazing. I love that. I love that you are just an innate risk taker. So you've just, experienced many career, sorry. As mentioned in your bio, you've experienced many career milestones, and, have really been a pioneer in tech and media. So what would you say is one of the pinch me moments that you simply can't forget?
That's an interesting one. I will say, when I was tapped to come into United Talent Agency to launch and run their new investment initiative, it was a big moment. It was a big moment for me in terms of moving from an operator into a venture role, which is something that I've been wanting to do. It was also an important moment because at that time, there were very few women writing checks in LA or otherwise. And so the idea, I had been a leader and founding team member with all men in tech. And the idea of being able to move now in this role of being seen as a check writer and investing in tech companies is important to me, to see a change in the ratio of women founders and funders, but very important to the overall ecosystem. So at that time, I felt like I was stepping into something that was both important to me, but important to the community.
Yes. Well, tell us about Founder Forward and, what the mission is for the company.
So I left my job at UTA after 3.5 years. And started this business, Founder Forward, which is really focused on helping founders and startups reach their full potential. What I realized when I hopped to the investment side is the piece I love the most is taking the calls from the founders and helping them work through issues, whether it was sort of an inside leadership game issue or an external issue. Many in the Portco started calling me coach. And so, I'd been an operator, then I was an investor. And what I realized, which fit ideally with just a different stage in my life, is I had started teaching at my alma mater, USC, and the coaching work that I was doing, and formally at the time, was bringing me the most joy. And I sort of felt like I tapped into my superpower and I went with it. So people thought I was nuts. Coaching is having a moment, but 5-ish years ago, to leave my swanky job to go and start this business was a risk, and people were happy to tell me they thought I was nuts. But again, I'm an entrepreneur. So yes. I went where my gut and my heart was telling me to go. And I built this business focused on all the things that you said in the intro, but really it's just about helping folks scale themselves alongside their businesses.
Yes, yes. Now, I'm sure, there are a bevy of founders that want to work with you. What do you look for? What is the criteria for a founder and company to work with you?
Well, one, I like a good challenge. So whatever the story leading up to, sort of what are they going through in the moment. But the I like a diversity in types of clients, right? So it makes it more fun for me. So some people will say, oh, you know, do you work with CPG businesses? Do you work with B2C businesses? And I work with any kind of business, right? That's not the kind of work we're doing. So the actual function of the business or what space you're in doesn't really matter for a coach. The most important, so the challenge, the diversity of client base and what the company is, but also the founder diversity. And then most important, people need to want to be coached. So somebody that's really fired up and going to be committed to like dig in and do the work is the most important thing, because then it will be a mutually rewarding experience.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. So, you know, when we first had our call before this, we talked about how leadership and parenting are very similar. And, you know, you really understand the trappings of a great leader and, you know, now can apply it to parenting. So what qualities do you feel are indicative of someone who's a great leader and can then in turn be a great parent too?
So I will answer that, but I do want to preface it with saying, I did not understand that. For a long time, despite having a mother that was a career woman, I was in finance and tech. And so back to really, really the only woman in the room in all of my experience. We still have diversity issues, but we're talking about 10 and 20 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I was working twice as hard as everybody in the room. And the idea that I might also be able to be a parent, they seemed at odds. And I think society plays them at odds. So it makes it such a struggle to make that decision. And the beauty of what I've learned is that they're not at odds. They feed each other. There's this amazing, like synergistic, symbiotic relationship of me growing as a leader, and I grow every time I'm coaching, and coaching leaders, and what I'm seeing, experiencing, and feeling as great traits for being a great parent. And so with that preface, I'll reference our good friend Sarah Harden, who introduced us. She sent me this lovely note that I cried and will have as a keepsake forever when I adopted Ryder. And one of the core components of the note that stood out was her talking about how parents are emotional light posts. And I say this all the time to my clients, right? You're the emotional light post of your team and your company. And so slowly but surely in the early days of being a parent, while I was coaching, I was just connecting the dots in the lessons and the topics every day, right? Which is emotional intelligence, self-awareness, authenticity. I'll tell you a big one is emotional regulation, which is under emotional intelligence, which is how do you manage yourself, right? When a kid does something wrong, or, you know, since I have a younger kid, like when he bangs himself into the wall, instead of going, oh, and making him have that response, how do you, you know, stay calm and respond in the moment? So I do a lot of work on how do we respond versus react, right?
Yes.
How do you manage your mindset and your reaction? Another one that's so important is communication, right? Communication skills, active listening, holding accountability rather than blame and shame. Blame and shame in a company leads to a toxic culture. Blame and shame with a child, which everybody go read Brene Brown, because all of her leadership work applies to parenting. But you always want to call out the behavior of the activity and not the person or not your child. And if you are a parent that calls out the child and makes them feel less than, makes them feel bad instead that they didn't behave in a certain way, then the connection is to the core of their being. Right. And so that tweak in a management and leadership style is very important lesson to parenting, which is make sure that the feedback or the commentary is always on the activity or the behavior and not on the person. Otherwise you're shaming, and shame can, you know, have some real impact and effect. So those would probably be some of the top ones. The other one is like parenting is servant leadership 101. Right? You say like, listen, I say to some of my founders when we're working through some ego things, like, this is not about you. It's about your team. This is about your employee. And like, as parenting, this is not about me. This is about Ryder. Right?
Yeah.
So servant leadership, humility, there's a whole lot I don't know, and I got to get real comfortable with it. So yeah, I really feel like this reframe that's sort of come into my mind about the connection between leadership and parenting has been extremely powerful for me in both contexts, but I think that it makes me a better leader and a better parent.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That is so profound. And I think that, as parents, we're oftentimes feeling like we're straddling two roles, that career success or, whatever kind of aspirations we have for ourselves and our own self-worth. And then that legacy and, what we're able to impart on our kids, and I think it's amazing how you've kind of connected the two, rather than have them kind of be two very separate parts of our lives.
Yeah, I think the reason, we haven't stated, I'm a little bit older than your average mom and I'm a single parent. The reason why I think I didn't do this for so long is because I thought it was so separate, or I thought that I had to straddle.
Right.
And it turns out that they build upon each other and actually make life more robust instead of less robust, which is always the like, well, if you become a parent, then you have to move out of this track. And it's like this, but that. And it's like, yes, and.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep, exactly.
Talk about it. I sent you a mantra. It's my mantra. I am both an excellent mother and a successful businesswoman.
And yes. Oh my goodness. I love it. I want to talk about growth mindset. We hear this buzzword everywhere. What really does it mean?
It means that we believe that with feedback and hard work, that we can develop and learn in areas potentially that we didn't otherwise think that we could. So I will be specific in the language we hear, because people will, of course, you say fixed mindset, growth mindset. Most people will say, oh, I have a growth mindset, right?
Right.
But all the time you hear language, I hear it with clients, but you hear it everywhere. Oh, I'm not that kind of person, or I'm not good with numbers, or the way I do something. Growth mindset is, every day is a new day. Don't get over identified with who you were, because every day is a new day to choose who you will be. And that can step into the learning of these things. And so it's sort of this let go of the over identification and know that you are malleable and constantly growing and becoming and learning.
Yes.
And I think that is, if you ask any VC, one of the number one traits you're looking for in a great founder. But I just think that that's one of the number one skills in life. I think life is about becoming and growing, and growth mindset is the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that we have to practice and rewire so that our kids can learn it too.
Right? How early on do I hear kids say, oh, I'm not good at math?
Yep.
Right? It's like, where are we getting that identity? We're telling ourselves the story. And what happens when we tell ourselves stories, usually the story we tell ourselves becomes reality, right?
Yes.
So part of that is just reframing the mind. It's believing in the growth, but what happens is we all tend to have these louder inner critics, and we need to be our own inner champion,
right?
And quiet the inner critic. And that's a huge skill for our children as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now you speak about best self-leadership, in your blog, and you've given talks on this. What does that entail?
Okay, well, so over my entire career, which now I'm making myself sound maybe older than I am in this interview, but so 20 plus years, I've worked with hundreds, directly and indirectly. I've worked with hundreds, founders, leaders, CEOs, and I really became obsessed with what the mindsets, practices, habits that set some leaders up for success, particularly since I work with a lot of high growth venture-backed companies on that roller coaster. And then, where other folks do not succeed. And I built a framework around that. And that framework is called Best Self-Leadership. And other than sort of all the statistics and data that I have from what I've seen, there's a very simple core concept to that, which is just that you cannot be an effective leader of others if you're not an effective leader of self, right? And so best self-leadership is sort of this framework and toolkit that imbues all of the work we do at Founder Forward. So I use it in one-on-one coaching, but I also, right now, I'm working with an amazing mid-sized company in the South, a healthcare company. We've run the whole leadership team through it. And it's self-care, self-awareness, because who you are is how you lead and how you show up in life. And if you don't know yourself, you can't grow yourself. Right? Self-management, which has two components, which is one, time, attention, and energy, which most people just focus on time management. And it's the trio, time, attention, and energy, which is focus. And then the second piece of management is managing your mindset and your emotions, which is often where the deepest work happens. And then the last bucket is self-growth. So, particularly for leaders that are driving businesses, every year you set up your yearly KPIs or OKRs for the business. You need to do that for yourself, right? So ultimately, this is how coaching became popular. So you've got 6 to 10 OKRs. You got the company OKRs and the leader, because your job is to grow alongside the company. That's a lot, right? So getting a thought and accountability partner to work through all of that is one of the reasons why coaching became popular. But so last year when we went into the pandemic, I was thinking about that self-leadership. And one of the things I say is leadership is a practice, not a position. Anybody is a leader in anything in life. You can be a leader of your family, your community, your church, or your company, or your team. And so, this framework of self-care, self-awareness, self-management, self-growth is not something that's solely for entrepreneurs. Best self-leadership is really for any human, because the goal is to show up and to continue to put the work in to become your best self and live into your purpose. And so ultimately what we'll probably do is offer this as like a separate online course that anybody can take, so that it's not just for leadership teams and entrepreneurs, because I think the application is much broader.
Wow. I'm sure the audience feels the same. I'm blown away. I wish I could turn you into an app or have you be a series of Post-it notes around my desk.
I have been told this app thing that I should be productized, because I have lots of homework and toolkits. But if you think about it as a parent, it's like, how do you set up your self-care system? I call it operating at peak performance, right? That is a wellness and your own physical, emotional, mental well-being. And then your awareness of how you're leading or how you're showing up as a parent. And then management is like, how are you able to tweak that so that you are showing up in your intended way? And then growth is like, well, where are the areas that are your strengths, but where are the areas that you would like to grow into strengths? And so this framework ended up being an amazing framework for me, not just with my clients, but amazing framework for me, because I've applied it both to my business, but both to my best, most important role ever, which is mommyhood.
Yes. And perfect segue into that. I want to hear all about that process that you went through. When did you decide I am going to become a mother?
I decided, interestingly enough, when I was going through my coach training program, and I have loved children, and I'm a fun Auntie Roro to countless children, but I always thought, one, I thought of it's so separate that it was going to take me back on all of this doubling down that I had been in dream and statement since I was 6, which was I was going to go run companies. But also, I will say there's a bunch of other factors that come into like, do you do it or do you not do it? I'm single. Am I waiting for the right partner? Do I want to raise a kid on my own? Can I raise a kid on my own? I know people do it, but man, it seems so hard. And all of that, you do the why. All of that just comes down to FEAR, fear in a different context, right?
Yes.
So I had really convinced myself, hey, you know what? I'm past that point. I love to travel. I'm a business builder. I'll be fun Auntie Roro. And then I went through this coaching program. And as I said, when I got a coach to help me move through some of the differences that were unique to being in a talent agency versus being in a startup, it was a game changer for me. And then I thought, I love doing this. And it was my superpower, but I want to go get accredited in it, a certification. And what happens when you go through a coach training is you actually do the work.
Yeah.
It's deep, hard work. That's how they sort of get you on board and how you can be a good partner to somebody. And so, whew, they said to you when you walked in there, a lot of you are doing this because you want to build a coaching practice, but we're going to tell you right now, it'll change your life. And I sort of did an eye roll, if I'm being honest, and was like, yeah. And by doing that work, by sitting down with who I am right now, what do I really want? What are my core values? What is this sort of quote unquote second half of my life look like? How do I want to design it? And the entire coaching program became more about my choice to be a parent and moving through the adoption process than it did, in terms of being a focus for me building a bigger and stronger coaching business. So that was the moment where I literally just inside of the coaching training meeting session while I was jamming with a partner and practicing something was like, I'm going to do it. It's not too late. I can do it. People do it all the time. It may be a little bit tougher if I'm a single mom. I've got a village of supporters. Of course, I didn't anticipate the pandemic.
Yeah.
But, that was the moment. And I didn't waffle from that moment. Like when I went in that moment, I went all in.
Wow. And then, I mean, with the pandemic, you were really, really all in because it was like, there was, just you and Ryder needed his mom. So tell us about that process. Firstly, how, you did your research and found the best adoption agency for you. And, now you have your beautiful son.
I'd love to share that. And then I would love to just send this link to folks because I have become the person that people know that adopted and everybody wants to connect a friend. And I want everybody to, if they choose, have this amazing journey like I did, but it's starting to be several calls a week. This all comes back to coaching. One of the things I say to my clients when they're really stressed or trying to figure something out, it's like, what's the next best step? And I hadn't even taken the steps, right? Like most people that call me to ask me about it haven't even researched the fact that in your city somewhere, there's a social agency that once a month has an adoption orientation. So I made the decision and I spoke with a couple of people finally, and I pulled around and I found the adoption orientation. First step, go to the adoption orientation. They give you the list of things to be done. They give you a site. They walk you through it. They hold your hand. And it was just I hadn't taken those steps yet because I was so blocked emotionally and psychologically about whether or not I was going to do this. And each little step, which at this point they make pretty easy and is digitized, although, might be digitized in a very 1980s way, right? There's some up leveling to the technology at some of these places. But, once you take that first step, the path and the process is pretty laid out for you. And of course, you can just stop at any point in time. So I always say to people, listen, this can take several years. And if you're even thinking about it, go online and Google adoption orientation in your city. It's a simple first step.
Right. Okay, great. Are there any roadblocks you hit or something that you want to share with hopeful parents that they are not going to intuitively be aware of?
Well, one, I would just say it takes longer than you think.
Okay.
But I don't want to make the process, just because it's digitized and spelled out for you, sound easy. There's a good deal of psychology to this process that comes in when you're actually getting to the point where you're matching and getting on phone calls with birth mothers and developing a relationship. So it is heavy and it is hard. That would be one of the points where I really wish I had a partner in it. Yeah. That piece of it, I would just say, be prepared emotionally for the idea of matching and unmatching. I think what they don't tell you is that sometimes you go through several matches and unmatches before you get to the one. So nobody had told me that. And we don't need to get into it here, but I had matched and I ended up unmatching. And I didn't know that happened. And so to sort of normalize the idea that there's more than one match and that you will find the universe will work out. Like I 100,000 and zillion gazillion percent know that Ryder is my boy and that we were meant for each other. And so that match wasn't meant to be. Right.
Yes.
So if you match and you unmatch, it wasn't meant to be. And I felt like I had a lot of help at the beginning of the process, and I didn't have a lot of clarity once we got into the heart and the hard stuff. And I was sort of on a solo road there. And I would have loved to know that like when I got the match, I didn't need to be so attached to that being the only opportunity and then feel the devastation of that in the same way. And that just your baby and your birth mom will come when the time is right, and you will know.
Yes. Through the process, did you find that it was easier or harder to have adopted a child at birth versus an older one?
Well, I'll tell you what, I actually thought I was going to adopt an older child. And there were a couple of reasons why I didn't. I thought I was going to adopt somebody not from the United States. And then that is more challenging now. I was a little nervous about doing the foster route, which you do if the child is of a certain age, only because then if the parent gets straightened out or out of whatever situation that they were unable to be a fit parent, there's always that, I think, fear.
Yeah.
Courts, and I didn't think I could handle that. So I just thought that once I had researched that and thought it through, I just went for a baby. But the foster system, and I have much respect for people that do it. I just decided it wasn't for me.
Yeah, no, and that's good to know, because it's a completely, different just process to undergo,
I can't foster a dog because it'll wreck me if somebody then gets a dog. So
exactly.
Of being able to do it with a human.
No, I know absolutely, it gets sticky. And what about for those who are interested in looking into adopting from another country, or having, more of an intercultural home? Did you have any findings?
Yeah, I hate to share them because I don't want it to get into a downer of a interview, but I spent a lot of time helping build schools in South America and Latin America, and I love that culture. And so in my mind, I was always going to adopt a toddler from Guatemala or El Salvador, and that was what it was if I did it.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
That was like the back of my mind for a long time. Again, I made no steps to do it. And then I kind of decided I wasn't going to do it, but that was going to be my thing. Unfortunately, for the years in which I was running through this process, which actually, I guess, fortunately now, because it may change. We had children in cages at the border, and this is that most of those countries pulled their adoption with the United States for valid reasons. And so there was just a political environment that changed that. And so now, and I could be wrong on this, but there's Africa is it's a country that a lot of people go to, it's more expensive. You obviously also are traveling there. And there's a few others. I am hopeful that we will start opening up the borders again to be able to adopt from Latin American countries. And I feel optimistic that that's probably likely. But when I was going through the process, there was a whole lot of turmoil going on that led to nixing that idea.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that, everyone is going to go on their own journey. And like you said, you find the child that was meant to be with you. But just kind of being aware of, what path to take is important. And so, I think that this conversation is going to be very helpful to parents who know they want to embark on this, but don't really know what the options are or where to start.
I would say one more thing that may be helpful. sitting down and really thinking about, as you're saying, like, what does this look like? What are the parameters?
Yeah.
You will get a form that will be very overwhelming, that goes through all kinds of parameters. Parameters mean health parameters of the baby, race parameters of the baby, drug background of the birth mom. That's
Right.
the stuff that I say. And the further in you go, the deeper the mental and emotional work. And so starting to think about that stuff so that you are ready to answer those questions, think about it on the earlier end.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really great to know. So there's no such thing as work-life balance. I never ask that trite question because it gets on my nerves too. But I do think that, really just the motif for this entire interview is leadership and parenting, and you can have both. There is an but you just have to make sure you show up, for your team, for your company, for your business, and then for your children. And so, what are some of the non-negotiables for you in how you show up?
I love this. Jeff Bezos talks about this. He calls it work-life harmony. But this is why my management is time, attention, and energy, because the concept of harmony, in which he states, he's like, if I make it home to dinner, but I'm still thinking about my product roadmap meeting, or if I'm in my product roadmap meeting and I'm thinking about my son's baseball,
Right.
then that's time management, right?
Mhm.
It's focus. It's where is your attention and your energy. And so I'm very committed to, and I hear parents say this all the time. Moms say this, but also dads. I don't want to disclude dads, but I'm in an environment where venture capitalists will say, oh my God, how are you going to build and run this company if you're pregnant? And it's like, or if you have children, it makes you more cognizant of being present and productive in the moment and getting your thing done, the thing you're passionate about in the here and now, because you have a whole other type of presence that you want to be, and another priority, right? So this comes down to stuff I coach on. It's called ruthless prioritization. It's being present. Back to my mantras. I write every morning, I am present, I am patient, I am calm. And, I really know how to be uber productive at whatever I have blocked off time for. So I guess the last thing I'll say there is I'm a master time blocker, and I block everything in color coordinated, and I have my Ryder colors, and then I have my founder forward colors, and like that's how I function, and it makes it quite easy. It's actually not that complicated,
Right.
with intention and a plan around it.
Absolutely. That's so important. And, I was listening to some of the interviews you did, and one thing that really struck me was that because we kind of want to do it all and have kind of, to a fault, become expert multitaskers, even when you're in a Zoom room, people might be checking their phone or their email or what have you, and try to do 2, 3, 4 things at once, but you're not showing up then. You're not being 100% present. And same with, when I take the kids to the park, I have to like stop myself from taking my phone out, because I could be that mom on the bench on my phone the whole time. But then I'm just like, I have an hour with them. Is this what I want to be doing?
Right, which is awareness, right?
Right.
We don't always
Right.
we're all on autopilot. I think that the big disclaimer around multitasking, which everybody loves to say, oh, I'm a great multitasker, or multitasking is it's actually like a misnomer. Like we actually be up to 40% less productive. It's the same thing. This is why I time block. When you're hopping from one thing to a podcast, to an interview, to a fundraiser, you're context shifting. Our brains don't move that fast. So you're actually losing cognitive load.
Right.
So we actually should do one thing at any one moment and do that thing awesome.
Yes. Yes. Tell us about a mom sense moment that you've had where you just trusted your gut. And I know, it really just fuels you in a lot of your decision making, but something that kind of related to Ryder that you can share.
I've been mom sensing my way through when daycare is right for us.
Yeah.
And part of that mom sense, I think, is colored by the fact that we're in a pandemic.
Mhm.
But I had made a decision that it was going to be earlier than now, and he's still not in daycare. So I then made the decision that it wasn't the right time for us. And man, I love the community of mommyhood because everybody is very helpful and wants to be helpful, but then there's also a lot of sort of inadvertent sharing of opinions. So I get a lot of opinions about whether or not I should send him to daycare, and financially and time wise, even for me and my attention, since he still is at home, there are a lot of benefits. But back to servant leadership, this is not about me, it's about Ryder. It's his health as well and wellness are my priority. And I think we will be getting there soon. But I've gone in and out of mom sensing my way through that. And we're not in daycare yet. And I'm not going to be shamed by it or sit around and second guess myself. I'm going to go, we'll end up at the right daycare at the right time for us.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I think, it's a tough call that all parents are having to make right now, especially, with preschoolers. Virtual school is a whole other beast, And so, yeah, I applaud you on listening to your mom sense with that one. Is there a quote that you live by?
I'm going to give you two quotes. And the thing is I have quotes on my printer, so I get to really read them because one's longer. So I'll start with a broad life quote that has driven my whole life, and you'll get this because we've just spoken about it, but it's Mark Twain. 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things that you didn't do than the ones that you did do. So throw off the bowline, sail away from the safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, discover. Love, love, love. That's how I live my life. That's a sailboating 20 way to say what my dad taught me, which was being big, go big or go home. One that I use every day, all day with my clients, so I may as well reference it, is entrepreneurship is a personal growth engine disguised as a business pursuit.
I love it.
Entrepreneurship is a personal growth engine disguised as a business pursuit, which is the work that I do with my clients. But I feel like that's very powerful. I believe better human, better leader. I believe better human, better parent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that you say it that way. Is there a product that you are just loving during this time? This is like the fun consumer segment, because it's always interesting to hear what people have to say. So is there something that you're just loving right now and want to share with the audience?
My life-saving product is Yumi.
Know
Yumi?
Yes, of course. The glass jars with the
clean, safe. All of the food is created by pediatricians, and it's all organic. And as a single mother who runs a business, it's been a lifesaver. I know that he's getting healthy food that I can grab very quickly if I hadn't had time to make something.
Yep. That's great. That's a really good one. And lastly, where can my listeners find you?
I'm a Twitter gal because it's like an early platform for a lot of techies. So I'm RM Ward at Twitter. LinkedIn, you can go find me there, Robyn Ward. On Instagram, I have a founder forward Instagram. So, if you're a business owner, an entrepreneur, I think that would be very useful. My personal Instagram is Robyn M. Ward. And my website is Founder Forward. So if you are interested in best self-leadership or any of the topics we've talked about, go to my website. Also, I have a newsletter, so you can sign up there.
Yes, definitely sign up for a newsletter. I feel like the parallels that you have drawn for us with your best self-leadership and parenting are just, so enlightening. I've never heard anyone speak about it the way you have. And, I think we all have to have this growth mindset as we're going through our day-to-day, whether we're building a business or raising a child. And I'm so thankful for you to come on today to share your experience around it.
I loved coming on. Thank you for having me.
Yay. That was amazing. That was
Good.
really,
All
really
right.
great. Okay, so I wanted to have you record some promos if you're cool
Yeah.
with that. So, I mean, you could look at camera, but it's we're definitely going to use the audio. I might use the video and teasers, and I'll definitely have you see before I publish anything. But it would just be, let me write it in the teasers. So hi, this is Robyn Ward, CEO of Founder Forward, and you're okay. So it's your standard kind of promo that goes ahead of the episode, and then the second part can be we got a chance to think about. And I can just kind of use them as promos. So it's written there. Yeah.
Reopening that document because.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can send it to you in the Zoom.
No, I have it. Oh, you can put it in the chat, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
There we go. And it's on the bottom that says teasers.
What is going on? Okay. All right, slowly but surely.
Mm-hmm.
Teasers. Okay.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. Am I just making up what we got a chance to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because you can run with it. It was, the leadership, the parenting. Yeah, it's just.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You want me to just say it now?
Yeah, start with the first one, and then you can just go into the next one.
Hi, this is Robyn Ward, CEO of Founder Forward, and you are listening to me on That's Total Mom Sense. We got a chance to speak about leadership, parenting, adopting, and so much more.
Amazing. Okay, and that was it. Was there anything that I missed in the interview?
I think so.
Okay, yeah.
That was
Okay,
fun.
I'll stop recording.